Okay, so let's continue with our part 3 here. It's a smaller part, but it's a slightly more advanced. It covers slightly more advanced topics here, and let's just go through it. So there's three main topics here. One is the result sets, which is how to read certain large data. Batch processing, which is to insert large data, and DatabaseLink on cloud. So result sets are basically a data structure that you can use to read when you have very large data sets being read into the Wolfram language. Sometimes you can run into certain problems with Java heap space. And one way to avoid that is, of course, to increase your Java heap space, but you can always take the help of this result set to only query as much data as you want, and avoid that condition altogether. So here, let me show you a quick example. And I also already have my connection open. So just a second, I'm just going to adjust my screen a bit. Okay. So so just trying to insert some data. Let me first check if okay, so there's a lot of data there and everything got inserted. That's like 10,000 rows. I don't want to see everything here, so I'm just going to delete that. So now I have some 10,000 rows in my database, in my items table, and SQL result set open will create a result set or open a result set, and you can do a SQL select of on the items table with that. So let me just open that result set. And now here are a few examples wherein I'm selecting 5 rows from there, or 10 rows from there, or the last 4 rows, and that's done through SQL result set read. And then when you're done, you can close the result set with SQL result set closed. Let me go to the documentation and show you in a little more detail. See that. Okay. So we saw a result set open, read, and close. Now, apart from that, you can also shift the current position. So this is like a cursor. So you can shift the current position of the cursor to tell it where do you next start reading from. So for example, set shift rs num. So shift the current position by num in the result set. Or you can just tell it to go to a certain position by using result set go to. Or just set the position, so set the current position of the result set. And so there's few examples here that you can go through. And here's few more go-to examples. You can just tell it to go to the first row by setting the position to 0, or third row by setting the position to 3. You can also set it backwards by putting a -2 or -1. Yeah, I think that's the basics of it. Let me go back to the notebook. Yeah, so, but this is basically one of the things that you would use when you have large data sets again. Let's go to the next one. So what happens when you want to insert a huge bunch of data? It's usually not that problematic when you are doing it through SQL insert, because internally the way SQL insert is built, that it has a batch size set, and it will do it in batches instead of inserting one row after one row like that, which takes a lot of time. So I'm not going to spend too much time here. Just go to a special notebook that we have for batch insertion that shows an example. So I'm not going to run this notebook because the example where it shows the comparison between batch and non-batch, the non-batch one takes a lot of time. So I'm just going to go through. It's already evaluated, so hopefully you'll be able to follow through. So to do this, first of all, I increase the heap space because we are showing a non-batched version also. So that's done through reinstall Java. You set the JVM arguments to whatever the heap size you want. There are some sample header names here. These are just for the headers, and we have some data types, which is already put into a list. So we have two types here. One is the varchar and then the double. Now we make a table wherein with just one line of expression, we are making like a single row here, which has the header and the type that it associates to. And then we just wrap around a SQL column around each one of those and provide the data type name and data length options here, which is this one. So this just makes the sample, making the sample SQL column just easier. So here's a huge bunch of it. And then we have some sample data that goes into the table. So we create this table using SQL create table, and then we have the rows, that is 50,000 rows inserted in a non-batched way. So we wrap this absolute timing around it to see how much time does it take to insert all that 50,000 row one by one. So that's why we have this map here. So it's taking one SQL insert, inserting it, coming back to the second SQL insert in that way. Now doing that, the number of rows inserted per second doing that is 66. And when you use SQL insert, which has the batching built in, the number of rows that goes in per second is 1,426 for this example, of course. So there's the timing difference, and there's the difference in the number of rows that you can get in within 1 second. And if you, again, let me just go back to, I'm just going to go to the batch insertion. Let's search for batch. No, that's not good. So if you go to the advanced topics, you would be able to see an entire documentation on this. Another thing that's not in this presentation, but I think I should mention that here, is using this templated form for inserting values comes very handy when you want to insert a lot of data. You prepare your data beforehand and then use this form in the SQL execute to insert that huge data here. So these are just the placeholders for the data here. I would definitely recommend going through this documentation if you're working with large data. Okay, so that's about batch insertion. And the last topic that I have here is a DatabaseLink on cloud. So DatabaseLink works on Enterprise Private Cloud. It is not yet available to Wolfram Cloud, or generally what we call the public cloud, or wolframcloud.com. So if you have, or your company or your school has private cloud, Wolfram Private Cloud installed, you can use DatabaseLink with it. So as an example, like what you can do with it is, I have a survey form here, and I'm running this off our internal private cloud that we have in the company. So I have a survey form, and I'm going to fill up the form, and the data that comes from that form is going to get inserted into a database. Now, There are certain functions within the language, like one of which is document generator, that will actually make a scheduled task to do something with that data whenever you schedule it to do. So you can just use scheduled task to do it. I'm using document generator because this will give you a document like a report kind of thing using that data. So you can actually see that it's getting the data from the database, processing it, making into a report, and then sending it to you through email in your inbox. So let's see this survey form. So this is the survey form. Let's say at the end of this webinar, you get a survey form that looks like this. This is just an example. And I make some selections here, and yes, and some comments like good webinar, and just submit the form. So the form got submitted. And let's see if I have so this is the table where it goes, and there is some data in it, which I inserted earlier. And let's go back to that. So by setting the cloud base to the internal cloud and then just connecting to it. Oops. I think I gave the wrong password. Okay, so that gets connected. Now I'm setting up a task that uses a template. So this is a template that I created, and this template gets the data from the database, and there are some charts, like bar charts functions in it that will take the data and create some bar charts based on the response from the survey. So I'm just going to evaluate that, and it gives me that cloud object. So I run the task and gives me another cloud object. So here you see that notification is set to all. So I should get an email with the report attached, and that attachment will be in the form of a CDF. I cannot show you my email for confidentiality reasons, and so I'm going to show you how the report looks like. This is how it looks like. So it shows you the total number of surveys taken, which is 6. So basically here I had the code of doing a select count of 1 from survey data, and then it gave me that result. And this is the result from the bar chart. And so this is how it looks like. And in the bundle notebook that you're going to get after the presentation, I'm going to put this template so you can run it for yourself, create this database, run it for yourself, and see. So this is about the comments. So whatever comments people put, I just did I just put a classifier around it with sentiment analysis. So the overall response of the webinar was positive or negative. You can know that. So this is one of the useful things that you can do from cloud if you have a private cloud, and it's a very nice example to show that. This brings us to the end of part 3 and the end of this database link. Here again, there are some resources. You will be getting the material that I have shown you today, and also the notebooks on batch insertion and the template to create that report.